Hello, and welcome to an overview of Essentials of Social Media Marketing, Chapter 5 on marketing with Instagram. And this is a loaded set of slides. I will say, this is going to be something that if you choose to go through all the slides that are provided, that's about 60 slides. And I've whittled this down to 20, actually less than 20 if you just look at the content. And also, something else to think about is that this section of the courseware has 11 sections, this chapter, and everything from an introduction all the way down to the looking ahead that all of the chapters with social networks have. So I'm going to try to boil this down into as succinct of a video as humanly possible. Um, for those who might not be familiar, I think a lot of people that are watching this probably are, but it's worth saying Instagram has been around since 2010, and until ChatGPT, it was the fastest growing platform in terms of user base of all time on the internet. It trumped everything. It wasn't even close. And then, obviously, in 2022, ChatGPT came around and beat it pretty quickly. Um, but hey, I mean, it's doubled its user base year over year for the first couple of years. Now we're sitting here with billions of users. I think it's widely considered the second or third biggest social network just by monthly active users today. Um, when we look at Instagram from a demographic standpoint, 2 billion users, that's obviously a ton. But really the interesting thing that I look at is we look at the largest age group, 18 to 24. And this is where your youngest population with purchasing power exists almost entirely. It's pretty rare that you encounter somebody in that age group that doesn't have at least some sort of presence on Instagram. And it's funny because I'm going through these slides and I met somebody at the gym, a guy that I was playing basketball with, and after talking to him for a while, he's probably 21 or 22. Instead of now exchanging numbers, he goes, "Hey, are you on Instagram?" And he's like, he goes, let me get your handle. I'll give you a follow. And that was the first time I had been asked that as the very first thing. Obviously, like it comes up with other people. And for other millennials like myself, it's very much kind of a stealth thing that, like, hey, we've reached this point. So once somebody follows the other person. But it was really interesting to hear that that's kind of how they communicate. People are first communicating now. It's how you learn more about somebody. You can see their content. And it's just kind of interesting to see how texting phones that is very much kind of secondary to just social media for a lot of people because that's how you learn about them. So um I like to look at the age group here as something that's really interesting. Also interesting, daily usage. 42% of users they visit Instagram several times a day. I know it's kind of like an all or nothing thing with people, but hey, really fascinating stuff there. A couple minutes on the Instagram for business thing. You know, I want to talk about business profiles. There are a bunch of different types of accounts on Instagram. There's your basic account that you create if you just start a personal account. You can turn that into a creator account, which is supposed to be more for influencers and gives them access to a better suite of analytical tools and other content. But then also there is the business account, also called the professional account. And the business profiles are interesting because most companies are active on Instagram now. It's pretty rare that the big ones aren't there. But also there have been instances of kids, not kids, teenagers, young adults, um, transitioning their personal account to a business account because they want the better suite of analytics. And now, when I say that, I mean it's not that great. I'm going to show you an example here for a minute, but um, I'm just going to jump past here. This is the professional dashboard. You do get your analytics, right? You can see the accounts that you've reached, and you can see um, really, I mean, nothing more than you could see, actually less than you could see on a platform like LinkedIn. But it's that you don't even know who. You still don't see who. But you do get to see the ebbs and flows over the past 30 days. The problem is you only get to see all your numbers for, I believe, 30 to 90 days. I don't think you can see anything more than 90 days back. Um, so if you're looking for historical data, like years of this, you're not going to be able to find it. And that's a huge shortcoming here. And I used to do a final project in my various social media classes, and that was a huge problem. Is even the groups who could get access to an Instagram account that had a business account, they couldn't do enough analysis going back in time in terms of follower growth, in terms of engagement rate, in terms of impressions, like how has the brand grown? For whatever reason, that's just not a thing. Meanwhile, if you go to something like LinkedIn, you can go back years and see stuff. I believe it's 360. I think maybe it's just 1 year that you can actually see everything, but it's pretty interesting to see the different platforms and what you can see. And I believe on Facebook you can see everything, like going back to the beginning. So they vary. Now, let's talk about an Instagram post real quick. Um, an Instagram post can be up to 2,200 characters. They say the shorter the better. And a couple lines of text gets cut. After a couple lines of text, the feed gets cut off, right, in the feed. And you have to click show more, or continue, or whatever. It's changed over the years. But um, clicking that, you see the rest of the post, and a lot of times the text is a lot longer. Generally, people like to put hashtags at the end of a post and brand mentions at the end of a post because they're not as important as to the narrative that comes with the caption. Um, Having said that, longer Instagram captions do have some advantages because if you click show more, that's an engagement, right? That if you can craft a compelling message that gets people to show more and read the whole thing, that helps your post with the algorithm. Another thing with an Instagram post is that, hey, there's no links in Instagram posts. Everybody, you can technically put a link in there, but that's no good. It's not going to click through. You're not going to be able to do anything with it. You can't really copy paste. You can't really do anything. But you can put a clickable link in your bio. So an Instagram bio, a lot of times you may have seen on a post it says, "Hey, check the link in bio for more on whatever story." And that's just because you can't put links in regular Instagram captions. It's just not a thing that's ever been available, no matter what kind of profile you have. And a lot of times, the go-to thing with creators, with influencers, with brands is they will put a link to maybe a link tree or other web property where they can then put other links and they can drive traffic from there. But for those of you who may have a website or have a website and an Instagram account to complement that, don't expect a ton of traffic from Instagram. It's just not going to be that driver, and that's not what people are. The people are not on Instagram to click through to another place. You have ads for that, which is for another time or actually a little bit later. But um, this is one of the biggest things with Instagram. There are no hyperlinks allowed in organic posts, no matter who and what kind of account you have. We have stories. This has been around for about 20 since 2017 and or 2016. And hey, it's something that is disappears after 24 hours. It's short form, follows the Snapchat style of post that made Snapchat what it is. And it's interesting because stories pop up at the top of your screen, the top of your Instagram app. And so you can get in front of more people that way. Now, you can also put links in stories so people can click that. So, yes, you can drive traffic to your website, but uh, stories are just a good way to remain relevant in the minds of your followers because people are more likely, you're going to get more people on average seeing your story um, than you likely will on a post in the first 6 to 8 hours. I think long term that won't stand. That doesn't kind of really stand up after that. But your story, you post a story and it's up there for all to see. And people are constantly looking at stories. People are always checking out what their followers and what the people that they follow are doing. Um, the issue that I have seen personally is that brands or anybody that has a boring story post is more likely to get skipped pretty quickly, almost like you would like you'd skip a video ad on YouTube. A live video, that is a Instagram story format, I guess you would say, although it's essentially just a story that's going live. Um, it's just live video. It exists on Instagram, kind of like what you see in the slide here. A lot of people don't. I've noticed live video has really fallen off recently in recent, I don't know, years maybe. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I think a lot of people have found, and a lot of brands have found them. Not a lot of individuals will watch the live videos for more than a couple of minutes, and so um, they've found it takes a lot of planning, a lot of um, talent in terms of being able to do something, but also you need to have be it in the right place at the right time. And in lieu of videos, live videos, you get reels. You get a lot of people doing more reels, which are more of the permanent, the 9 by 16 TikTok style video. Um, these are continuously changing in terms of what Instagram allows. There are differences, for example, between the type of video that you can upload to Instagram and what you can record natively in the app. I believe the limit for videos that you can record in the app are 3 minutes, and I believe the limit for videos that you can upload are up 9 or 10 now. And I could be wrong, that it's constantly changing. But the other thing is that this is continuously changing in terms of like what Meta is doing, um, what the network is doing, because on one hand, their number one competitor is TikTok, but that was not always the case. 10 years ago, the Instagram's number one competitor was Snapchat, and Stories really was kind of a killer to Snapchat in terms of the audience, the older audiences in particular. Then once TikTok came along, Instagram came up with Reels as another way to compete, fend off, copy what TikTok has. Now Instagram Reels are viewed. I don't think they're viewed as often, as much as TikTok, but it has certainly helped to fend off the threat of TikTok truly taking over. I know on the earlier slide it said Instagram was the number 4 social network today. Um, I still would rank Instagram above TikTok for the time being. But of course, I don't know how much longer that will be. I do think TikTok is destined to eventually take over, even though it's entirely videos. Real quick on the algorithm, Instagram started like every other social network where you would just see where you would only see content from the people that you follow, and you saw them in chronological order, starting with the most recent. That was once a thing. Then in 2016, everything changed. It was no longer chronological. You were seeing the most popular ones first. And then a little bit later, you started seeing posts from people that you didn't follow. And now every single social media platform has it the same way, where you are seeing a curated list of content that the platform thinks that you will like. And it is a combination of people you follow, people you don't follow, brands you don't follow, ads, and then also more ads. So there is just a lot of different type of content that goes into the algorithm now. And these 4 steps are already this bulleted list or numbered list of 4 is already outdated, because we learned recently from one of the Instagram executives himself that one of the biggest drivers of virality, so one big thing that the algorithm looks for to get your post in front of more people, is how many people send your post to another person in a direct message. Instagram said that sharing content like that shows a post is truly compelling and valuable to not just one person, but to 2 people, into a relationship between individuals. And sometimes it's more. It's one to like a group. You can have groups of direct messages on Instagram. And so that is probably the most, I wouldn't say it's eye-opening, because we all kind of expected it, but we are now faced with this idea that We have great content that people won't just like, that people won't just comment, but that people are going to connect with so deeply that they are willing to send it in a direct message to another person. It is it's pretty interesting to see, to say the least, to see this. And next time you scroll through Instagram, if you have an account, look at the content is often I'm seeing, at least for me, I'm seeing a lot more of, hey, send this to somebody who you love, or send this to that one friend who does this and that. And these are people playing up the algorithm and trying to get their content in front of more people. All right, so let's go back to the business side. Stories and reels, live videos. These are all tools that you can use to make your brand a little bit more reachable. It says discoverable here. I guess that too. Um, the way I look at it, that's great, but you need to have a strategy to go with it. Um, don't Similar to what I talked about in the Facebook video, if you've watched that, um, Instagram is not the place to just sell your stuff. Some businesses, some brands can do that. And yes, the first two bullet points in this list say that. However, unless people are following your brand for that exact thing, right? There are some out there. Instead, you want to show the human side of the brand so that it can live a little bit longer in the minds of customers and potential customers. The behind the scenes thing is the kind of like the only reason that I kept this slide in here. And the feature influencer is very similar to what a slide from the Facebook one was, hey, the more humane it can look, and um, the more that your content can appear like, hey, this is an influencer or somebody like, hey, like this is a brand for people like you. That will help drive brand awareness, and it's a good touch point on the path to turning a lead into a customer. I would just be very cautious when it comes to actually showcasing new products. The example here is Apple iPhone. Of course, that's going to be like that's what people follow Apple for. They want to see the new stuff. And I really don't like when examples like Apple are brought up here because 99.9% of us are never going to be in the position where we can manage one of the largest brands on earth. Um, I mean, it's just not something that any of us are going to do, and it's not a situation that any of us will ever be in. Instead, you need to think of it as, hey, people are following your brand for a reason. Are they following it to for coupons and discounts and promotions? Maybe. If you've built that, that type of brand, then great. If not, and people are probably following your brand because you post compelling and useful educational content, which is really the crux of this entire all of social media. You want to create content that people will find valuable enough that they will follow you or at least engage with your content. Um, so a couple more slides here. We've talked about TikTok versus Instagram video views. Um, the longer the reel, generally the more views you get. At least that is the theme that people are coming up with here. Um, but also, the long, short versus medium versus long is very relative. Um, in 2019, this was short, 10 versus 20 versus 30 seconds. Now we're talking less than a minute, 2 minutes and three plus. And this is going to continue to change over time. It may go back to shorter. It may even draw out to be a little bit longer. I do think eventually Instagram might try to compete with YouTube in terms of longer form video. I do think the future of video is more vertical, and I do think the horizontal video is, that's more of like cinema movies, something that you're going to sit down and watch on a TV. But if you're on your phone, you're probably going to just want to keep it upright in the vertical format. I talk about this a lot in the content marketing courseware that I have that um, people don't want to tilt their phones back and forth and as they try to watch different types of content. They just want a consistent experience. And when you look at how brands work, this is a study of, I should have mentioned this before. This slide is just brands. This is not people. These are brands videos. Um Interestingly enough, longer reels from brands are the ones that perform the best. But why is that? That's kind of a question I have. I only kept this slide in here because I wanted to talk about the whole point of how videos work on Instagram, how reels work compared to TikTok, compared to YouTube. Um, and also, the vertical versus horizontal thing is a big deal. You can still upload a horizontal video to Instagram. It would just be like a traditional photo post, not a reel per se. Um, Influencers, they're important on Instagram. Yes, use them. That's about it. If you were to create a post and publish it, and it's from an influencer, you can collaborate now. You can add another user who would be like an owner of the reel, and it would live on their profile, things like that. Influencers, they're younger. They focus more on the younger generation. I will have more content. I actually have an assignment all about actually finding influencers and using a tool called Collabster, that is really interesting because you find actual influencers. What is it, the stuff that they post? What kind of rates do they charge? And then, what are their policies in terms of sharing brand content and, um, you know, doing all of these things on this list, like taking over an account, creating a reel for your brand, or are they just creating it for themselves? All sorts of variables that are at play here. This is just a good thing to have, and that is, hey, post visually appealing content. The end. It's got to be visually appealing. Instagram was built on pictures, on photos. Instagram gained popularity because it was Photoshop without having to know Photoshop. You could add filters to photos. You could change a headshot to black and white. You can make it sepia. You can make it more rich and flowery and add colors. And a lot of people like that. But now it has taken on an entirely different idea. It's an entirely different identity. And as a result, photos with faces still do well. Photos like this that you see here from NASA are good too because it's really unique. But hey, photos with faces get 38% more likes than those without. I think NASA is a nice exception to the rule. However, the more you can use faces and make it more human, the better. I only show this because I don't like this. Again, I've mentioned this before. Optimal times, I do not abide by optimal times. Um, you should be posting not when the world is on Instagram, but when your audience specifically is on Instagram. And not just that, but think about your audience time zone wise. If, for example, I have a client, they have two offices, San Diego and in Washington, D.C. And hey, if you're going to have an audience across the entire United States of America, maybe you should take that into consideration when posting content to the gram. Also, think about generationally. If your audience is a little bit older or a little bit younger, they may be using Instagram at different times of day. This time here that you see, sure, but this also tells me that people are always on Instagram and are like high schoolers and college students are on Instagram in the middle of the day. Is that the case? I don't know. You need to look at your own analytics and see when your own followers and when your audience is actually active on Instagram. Instagram advertising, it's all run through Meta. It all goes through Facebook, just like Facebook ad would. The way that it works is, hey, I want to create an ad on Instagram, but I have to go to Facebook. And from there, I then create an ad and I can set it to launch on Instagram. You can promote posts within the Instagram app, but I don't recommend it, mainly because you get charged a very fat 30% Apple fee from iPhone if you're using that. Don't do it. It does not help. You're better off just using the business manager instead. Um, what does this mean though? Ads. There's a bunch of different ways that ads work. There are story ads like you see here. There's just traditional image ads. We've all seen that, but then also videos, carousels, which is multiple photos. Um, and then you see all the other stuff, collections, which is a bunch of them there on the left. You'll see ads in your Explore page, and there's ads within shopping, and then Reels. Just about every format of content that Instagram has you can place an ad there. That is why they are one of the best when it comes to advertising on social media. And it's why it's often so profitable for companies. We'll talk more about advertising another time, but I wanted to keep this under 20 minutes. I'm at 25 minutes, so sorry about that. Um, but yeah, that's it for Instagram. I tried to boil it down to as short as I could, but even still, I was almost half an hour. So for questions, I'm happy to go do a deeper dive at other points, but that is all for now.